I'm staring at a resignation letter that's about to blow up a $120 million revenue stream, and honestly, I'm not sure if I'm having the best day of my career or a complete mental breakdown. The boardroom behind me is dead silent except for the sound of a 20-year business relationship imploding in real time. But let me back up and tell you how a $2,000 budget rejection turned into the most expensive mistake my company ever made. My name's Brian Mitchell, and for the past 22 years, I've been the guy who makes sure the parts show up when they're supposed to. Senior Supply Chain Manager at Meridian Technologies, specializing in precision manufacturing components. Not glamorous, but when you're responsible for a supply chain that feeds $400 million in annual revenue, you learn a few things about leverage. The trouble started 3 months ago with what should have been a routine email. I was buried in my cube working through a logistics nightmare involving a delayed shipment from Shenzhen when my assistant forwarded me a message from Victor Novak. Now, Victor runs Novak Precision in Prague, one of those old-school European manufacturers that's been around since before computers. They make exactly one product, a pressure calibration microchip that goes into our top-selling industrial monitoring systems. Here's the thing about specialized components in manufacturing. They're not like buying office supplies. You can't just hop onto Amazon Business and order a replacement. This particular chip took Victor's team 18 months to develop back in 2003, and it's manufactured using proprietary tooling that exists nowhere else on Earth. No other supplier makes it, no one else can make it, and our entire Pro System line depends on it. That Pro System line, it generates $120 million annually and represents about 30% of our company's total profit margin. So when Victor sends an email, I read it carefully. His message was polite but direct. After 20 years of stable partnership, the global supply chain was shifting. Chinese manufacturers were offering aggressive deals, German tech companies were throwing venture capital around, and his board was getting pressured to diversify their customer base. The solution was simple. Send someone to the annual Central European Precision Manufacturing Summit in Prague. Face-to-face meetings, relationship maintenance, securing our position as a preferred customer for the next 5 years. The cost? A $2,100 business trip. Coach ticket, basic hotel, 3 days in Prague to lock down a supply agreement that protected 30% of our revenue. I put together a one-page proposal for my manager, Derek Hartman. Derek's one of those guys who thinks management means having opinions about everything while understanding nothing. Former sales guy who got promoted based on his ability to sound confident in meetings, even when he's completely wrong about the technical details. I walked into his office with cost projections, risk assessments, and a breakdown of what we stood to lose if Victor decided to prioritize other customers. The numbers were crystal clear. Spend $2,100 now or risk losing access to a component that generated $120 million annually. Derek barely looked at the proposal. A trip to Prague? Come on, Brian. That's just a vendor trying to get a free vacation out of us. These European suppliers are all the same. They love the relationship talk, but business is business. Victor's not going anywhere. We've been his biggest customer for 2 decades. I tried explaining the competitive pressure, the Chinese manufacturers circling, the German startups with deep pockets. Derek waved me off. Look, I've been in this business for 15 years. These supplier conferences are just expensive networking events. Send them an email. Tell them we're committed to the partnership and save the company some money. That's what real management looks like. That's when I made the mistake of showing him the fine print in Victor's email, the part about evaluating partnership priorities based on demonstrated commitment levels and restructuring our customer portfolio for strategic growth. Derek actually laughed. You're overthinking this, Brian. Victor's not stupid enough to walk away from guaranteed volume. We buy 60% of his production capacity. He needs us more than we need him. That last part was technically true, but strategically irrelevant. Yes, we were Victor's biggest customer. But Victor was our only supplier for a critical component. In supply chain management, that's called single source dependency, and it's the kind of vulnerability that can destroy companies overnight. I left Derek's office with a denied travel request and a sick feeling in my stomach. 22 years in supply chain management teaches you to recognize the warning signs of a system failure. The signs were all there. Vendor communicating urgency, competitive pressure increasing, management dismissing risk. It was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. That night I sat in my home office reviewing our supply contracts with Novak Precision. The agreements were solid, but included standard clauses about production capacity allocation and delivery priorities. Nothing that legally bound Victor to maintaining our current supply levels if he decided to prioritize other customers. I pulled up my personal credit card and booked a flight to Prague. Economy class, middle seat, connecting through Frankfurt with a 6-hour layover. Total cost, $1,847. I submitted a personal time-off request for 3 days, told my wife I was handling a supply chain issue, and started researching Prague hotels with decent Wi-Fi. The decision felt reckless and completely necessary at the same time. In 22 years of supply chain management, I'd learned that relationships matter more than contracts, especially with European manufacturers who still do business based on handshakes and personal trust. The flight to Prague gave me 12 hours to think about what I was walking into. Viktor Novak was old-school Central European business. His company survived the communist era, navigated the transition to market economy, and built their reputation on consistent quality and reliable delivery. But Victor was also getting pressure from his board to modernize their customer relationships and expand into new markets. I'd met Victor exactly once, during a facility tour in 2016. He was a compact, serious man who spoke precise English and had the kind of handshake that communicated decades of manufacturing experience. He'd shown me around the production floor personally, explaining the specialized tooling and quality control processes that made their chips unique. During that visit, his daughter Elena had mentioned their frustration with American companies that treated European suppliers like interchangeable vendors. "My father built relationships with your predecessors," she'd said. "But your new managers only care about quarterly price negotiations. They don't understand that manufacturing partnerships require investment from both sides." That conversation stuck with me because it highlighted a fundamental shift in how American companies approached international suppliers. The old generation of executives had understood that global supply chains ran on personal relationships and long-term thinking. The new generation treated suppliers like line items on a spreadsheet. Landing in Prague, I realized I was betting my career on the assumption that Victor still valued the old way of doing business. If I was wrong, I'd blown $2,000 and 3 vacation days on what Derek would later call an unauthorized sightseeing trip. The Central European Precision Manufacturing Summit was held at the Prague Convention Center, a modern glass building that looked out of place among the medieval architecture. About 200 attendees, mostly European manufacturers and their customers, with a handful of American and Asian representatives. I registered as an independent consultant, technically true since I was funding the trip personally, and spent the first morning networking with suppliers I'd worked with over the years. The conversations were illuminating. Chinese manufacturers were indeed making aggressive moves, offering prices 20% below European suppliers. German startups were promising cutting-edge technology upgrades. The established European manufacturers were under serious pressure to prove their value proposition. Victor found me during the lunch break. "Brian Mitchell from Meridian Technologies," he said, extending his hand. "I was not expecting to see you here." "Derek Hartman sent his regrets," I replied. "But I thought the partnership was important enough to attend personally." Victor's expression shifted slightly. "Mr. Hartman sent regrets?" "We sent 3 invitations." That's when I realized how badly Derek had miscalculated. Victor hadn't sent a casual conference invitation. He had sent multiple formal requests for Meridian to participate in strategic partnership discussions. Derek's dismissive response had been interpreted as disrespect. "Walk with me," Victor said. We stepped onto a balcony overlooking the Vltava River. The afternoon sun reflected off the water, and the sound of trams echoed from the streets below. Victor leaned against the railing and got straight to the point. "Brian, I have been manufacturing precision components for 35 years. I built my company during economic chaos, maintained quality during shortages, and developed specialized expertise that takes decades to replicate. But your management treats me like a commodity supplier." He pulled out his phone and showed me a spreadsheet. "Chinese manufacturers are offering contracts for 70% of current pricing. German startups promise advanced automation and faster delivery. Your company responds to partnership discussions with silence." The numbers on his screen were sobering. Meridian represented 60% of Novak Precision's revenue, but we were also the most demanding customer in terms of delivery requirements and quality specifications. If Victor could replace our volume with multiple smaller customers at higher margins, the business case was clear. "What would it take to maintain our partnership?" I asked. Victor smiled for the first time since we'd started talking. You came to Prague? That demonstrates respect for the relationship. But respect from you is not the same as commitment from Meridian Technologies. He explained the competitive landscape from his perspective. Chinese manufacturers were building capacity for precision components, backed by government subsidies and aggressive pricing strategies. German startups were developing next-generation manufacturing techniques that promised superior performance. European suppliers like him were caught between low-cost competition and high-tech disruption. I need partners who understand that manufacturing relationships require mutual investment, he said. Your predecessor, James Morrison, visited Prague every 18 months. He understood our capabilities and our challenges. He saw Novak Precision as a strategic asset, not a vendor. James Morrison had retired 3 years ago, and his replacement, Derek, had never visited a supplier facility. That generational shift in relationship management was creating vulnerabilities throughout our supply chain. What kind of investment are you looking for? I asked. Victor pulled out a folder. Technical collaboration, joint development of next-generation components, guaranteed volume commitments in exchange for exclusive supply agreements. The kind of partnership that creates value for both companies. He opened the folder and showed me a preliminary proposal. Novak Precision would develop an upgraded version of our current chip, incorporating improved performance specifications and reduced manufacturing costs. In exchange, Meridian would commit to minimum volume guarantees and provide technical input from our engineering team. The proposal was exactly the kind of strategic partnership that Derek would never understand. It required upfront investment, long-term thinking, and recognition that supplier relationships needed active management. But it also offered significant competitive advantages, improved product performance, cost reductions, and secure supply chain access. This looks promising, I said, but I need to be transparent with you. Derek Hartman rejected the travel budget for this conference. I'm here on personal time and personal expense. I don't have authority to negotiate agreements on behalf of Meridian. Victor nodded slowly, but you have 22 years of supply chain experience and detailed knowledge of Meridian's requirements. You understand the technical specifications and business implications better than any manager. That's when he made the offer that changed everything. What if you represented our partnership independently? Not as a Meridian employee, but as an authorized distributor. You understand our capabilities, you know Meridian's needs, and you have the experience to manage complex supply relationships. The idea was audacious and completely logical at the same time. Instead of selling directly to Meridian, Novak Precision would sell to my distribution company, which would then resell to Meridian and other customers. I would become the exclusive North American distributor for their precision components. I don't have distribution experience, I said. You have something more valuable, Victor replied. You understand the technical requirements and the business relationships. Distribution is just logistics and contract management. You have been doing that for 22 years. He pulled out his business card and wrote a phone number on the back. Think about it. If you decide to move forward, call my daughter, Elena. She handles our international partnerships. You can develop this as a side business initially, then decide whether to make it your primary focus. The flight back to Columbus gave me 8 hours to consider Victor's proposal. The business model was straightforward. Purchase components from Novak Precision at wholesale prices, then resell to American manufacturers at market rates. The profit margins would be substantial, and the exclusive distribution rights would create a defensive moat around the business. But starting a distribution company would require significant changes. I'd need to establish an LLC, develop customer contracts, manage international shipping logistics, and handle customs documentation. Most importantly, I'd need to decide whether to pursue this as a side business while remaining at Meridian or make it my full-time focus. The decision became clearer when I returned to the office and Derek asked about my vacation days in Prague. Actually, I attended the Precision Manufacturing Summit, I said. Had some productive conversations with Victor Novak about our supply relationship. Derek looked annoyed. I told you that trip was unnecessary. What did Victor want? Another price increase? I explained Victor's concerns about the competitive landscape and his interest in deeper partnership collaboration. Derek's response was predictable. These European suppliers always want to complicate simple transactions. Tell Victor we're satisfied with the current arrangement and don't need to fix what isn't broken. That afternoon, I called Elena Novak from my car during lunch break. She picked up on the second ring, and her English was fluent and precise. Mr. Mitchell, my father mentioned your conversation in Prague. Are you interested in exploring the distribution partnership? I am, but I want to understand the business structure better. What would the exclusive territory include, and what are the volume expectations? Elena explained that North American distribution rights would include the United States, Canada, and Mexico. Minimum volume commitments would start at current Meridian purchase levels and could grow as I developed additional customers. Novak Precision would provide technical support, marketing materials, and shipping logistics assistance. The arrangement benefits everyone, she said. We get a dedicated partner who understands our technology and the American market. You get exclusive access to specialized components that are difficult to source elsewhere. Your customers get better service and technical support. The financial projections were compelling. Based on current pricing and volume levels, the distribution margins would generate approximately $180,000 annually just from Meridian's purchases. Additional customers could easily double or triple that revenue. What's the timeline for moving forward? I asked. We can have legal agreements drafted within 2 weeks. You would need to establish your business entity and obtain necessary licenses. We could begin the transition gradually, starting with new orders while honoring existing direct contracts. That evening, I sat in my home office with incorporation paperwork and tried to process the magnitude of what I was considering. After 22 years as an employee, I was contemplating becoming an entrepreneur. The financial rewards were significant, but so were the risks. The decision crystallized the following week when Derek announced that our department was being restructured for efficiency. 2 senior supply chain managers would be eliminated, and remaining staff would handle increased responsibilities for the same compensation. Derek would present the cost savings to senior management as evidence of his operational improvements. I realized that my 22 years of experience and institutional knowledge were viewed as expenses to be minimized rather than assets to be leveraged. Derek's management philosophy was based on treating people as interchangeable resources and relationships as unnecessary complications. That night, I completed the LLC incorporation paperwork for Mitchell Supply Chain Solutions and submitted the necessary documentation to the State Business Registry. The filing fee was $125, and the registered agent service cost another $99 annually. By the end of the week, I had a legitimate business entity and a federal tax ID number. Elena and I finalized the distribution agreement over a series of phone calls and email exchanges. The contract was straightforward. Exclusive North American distribution rights for Novak Precision components, with minimum volume commitments and performance standards. The initial term was 3 years, with automatic renewal options. Novak Precision would handle all manufacturing and international shipping to my designated warehouse facility. I would manage North American logistics, customer relationships, technical support, and sales development. They would provide training materials, technical specifications, and engineering support for customer applications. The most delicate aspect was transitioning Meridian from a direct customer to a distributor customer without disrupting their supply chain operations. Elena suggested a gradual approach. New orders would go through my distribution company while existing contracts continued directly with Novak Precision. 3 weeks after returning from Prague, I had a signed distribution agreement, a business bank account, and a warehouse space leased in an industrial park 20 minutes from Meridian's facility. I also had a resignation letter that I wasn't quite ready to submit. The opportunity to test the new business model came sooner than expected. Meridian's production planning team submitted a rush order for additional components to support an unexpected contract win. The order value was $340,000, with delivery required in 6 weeks instead of the standard 12-week lead time. Derek's response was typical. Demand that Victor accommodate the rush order at standard pricing and delivery terms. We're his biggest customer, Derek told me. He needs to prioritize our requirements. I knew from my conversations with Elena that rush orders required premium pricing and displaced other customers' scheduled production. Victor would accommodate Meridian's request, but at increased cost and with reduced enthusiasm for the partnership. Instead of relaying Derek's demands to Victor, I submitted the rush order through my distribution company. Mitchell Supply Chain Solutions placed the order with Novak Precision at premium pricing, then quoted Meridian with appropriate rush charges and expedited delivery fees. The total cost to Meridian was $47,000 higher than Derek expected, but the components would be delivered on schedule with full technical support. Derek complained about the price increase, but Meridian's production team desperately needed the components. More importantly, the transaction demonstrated the value of the distribution partnership. Victor received appropriate compensation for rush production. Meridian got the components they needed on schedule, and my distribution company earned $23,000 in profit for managing the logistics and customer relationship. Derek remained oblivious to the changing dynamics. He continued treating supplier relationships as transactional arrangements that required minimal investment or attention. Meanwhile, Victor was developing loyalty to Mitchell's Supply Chain Solutions as a partner who understood manufacturing realities and paid appropriately for specialized services. The transition accelerated when Derek made a critical error in supplier relationship management. During a quarterly business review call, he suggested that Novak Precision should consider reducing prices to remain competitive with Chinese manufacturers. He also mentioned that Meridian was evaluating alternative suppliers for future requirements. Victor's response was polite but firm. "Derek, we have been partners for 20 years. Our pricing reflects specialized manufacturing capabilities and consistent quality standards. If Meridian prefers to prioritize cost over reliability, we understand. But we will focus our capacity on customers who value our capabilities." The call ended with Victor committing to honor existing contracts while declining to discuss future volume commitments. Derek interpreted this as a negotiating tactic and assumed Victor would eventually agree to price concessions. I knew better. Victor was shifting production capacity to other customers who demonstrated respect for the manufacturing partnership. Chinese competition was indeed aggressive on pricing, but their lead times were longer and quality consistency was questionable. German startups offered interesting technology, but their manufacturing capacity was limited. Victor was positioning Novak Precision as a premium supplier for customers who needed reliable access to specialized components. Meridian's volume was significant, but not irreplaceable if Victor could develop relationships with multiple smaller customers at higher margins. 2 months after establishing Mitchell Supply Chain Solutions, I was managing 60% of Meridian's component requirements through my distribution company. Derek remained unaware of the arrangement because the parts arrived on schedule and met all specifications. His only concern was that procurement costs had increased slightly. The financial results were exceeding projections. Distribution margins were generating approximately $15,000 monthly, and I was developing relationships with additional customers who needed access to Novak Precision's specialized components. Several smaller manufacturing companies were interested in premium quality chips for niche applications. The situation reached a tipping point when Derek announced plans to consolidate suppliers and eliminate redundant vendor relationships. His cost-cutting initiative included terminating contracts with smaller European suppliers and consolidating purchases with larger Asian manufacturers. "We're spending too much time managing relationships with boutique suppliers," he announced during a staff meeting. "Asian manufacturers offer better pricing and greater capacity. European suppliers are just more expensive without providing additional value." Derek's consolidation plan would eliminate Novak Precision along with several other specialized suppliers. He was gambling that component requirements could be met by larger manufacturers at reduced costs. The strategy looked good on spreadsheets, but ignored technical specifications and quality requirements that made certain suppliers irreplaceable. I realized that Derek's mismanagement was creating an opportunity for my distribution business. If Meridian terminated their relationship with Victor, other customers would compete for access to his production capacity. Mitchell Supply Chain Solutions could become the exclusive gateway for North American customers who needed specialized precision components. That evening, I called Elena to discuss the implications of Derek's supplier consolidation strategy. "My father anticipated this development," she said. "American purchasing managers often prioritize short-term cost savings over long-term partnership value. We have been preparing for the possibility that Meridian would choose price competition over relationship collaboration." She explained that Novak Precision had been developing partnerships with German automotive suppliers and Japanese electronics manufacturers. These customers paid premium prices for specialized components and maintained long-term volume commitments. "If Meridian chooses to end our partnership, we can allocate their production capacity to customers who value our capabilities," Elena said. "But we would prefer to maintain the relationship through your distribution company. You understand our technology and Meridian's requirements better than anyone." The solution was elegant. Mitchell Supply Chain Solutions would become Meridian's supplier for precision components, purchasing from Novak Precision and managing all aspects of the customer relationship. Derek could achieve his goal of supplier consolidation while maintaining access to critical components. But Derek's ego was invested in eliminating European suppliers entirely. He wanted to demonstrate cost savings by moving all purchases to Asian manufacturers, regardless of technical implications or quality considerations. I submitted my resignation letter on a Thursday morning in November. Derek's reaction was predictably dismissive. "You're making a mistake, Brian. 22 years with the company, good pension benefits, stable employment. What are you going to do, become a consultant?" The market's flooded with ex-corporate guys trying to freelance. I didn't mention Mitchell Supply Chain Solutions or the exclusive distribution agreement with Novak Precision. Instead, I gave 2 weeks' notice and offered to train my replacement on critical supplier relationships. Derek assigned my responsibilities to a junior supply chain analyst with 3 years of experience and no background in international supplier management. The transition briefing lasted 2 hours and covered dozens of complex vendor relationships that had taken years to develop. My last day at Meridian was December 15th. I cleaned out my cube, turned in my badge, and walked out with 22 years of institutional knowledge and relationships that Derek considered replaceable. Mitchell Supply Chain Solutions was already generating $18,000 monthly in distribution margins, with additional customers expressing interest in Novak Precision's specialized components. The business was profitable from day one and positioned for substantial growth. The real test came in January when Meridian's production team submitted their first large order after my departure. The junior analyst who replaced me contacted Victor directly and demanded standard pricing and delivery terms for a complex order with tight deadlines. Victor's response was polite but clear. Novak Precision no longer accepts direct orders from Meridian Technologies. All North American purchases must go through our authorized distributor, Mitchell Supply Chain Solutions. The junior analyst escalated to Derek, who called Victor directly and demanded an explanation for the changed terms. Victor's response was businesslike and final. Meridian chose to prioritize supplier consolidation over partnership relationships. We respect that decision and have adjusted our customer service accordingly. Derek's call to me was desperate and angry. "What the hell did you do to Victor? He's refusing to sell to us directly. This is some kind of sabotage." I explained the distribution arrangement calmly and professionally. Victor made a business decision to work exclusively through authorized distributors in North America. Mitchell Supply Chain Solutions can handle all your requirements at competitive pricing with excellent service. "This is extortion," Derek said. "You're holding the company hostage." "This is business," I replied. "You decided that European supplier relationships weren't worth maintaining. Victor decided that American customers needed better service than direct sales could provide. Mitchell Supply Chain Solutions bridges that gap." The pricing structure I offered Meridian was fair but reflected market realities. Components were available at competitive prices, but rush orders carried appropriate premiums and minimum volumes required advance commitments. No more demanding specialized service at commodity pricing. Derek spent 2 weeks trying to find alternative suppliers for the precision components. Chinese manufacturers could produce similar chips, but their lead times were 16 weeks instead of 8, and quality certification required additional testing. German startups offered advanced technology, but their production capacity was limited, and pricing was 30% higher than Novak Precision. After burning through their component inventory and facing production delays, Meridian's management finally approved purchasing through Mitchell Supply Chain Solutions. The first order was $280,000 for standard components with 8-week delivery. I processed the order efficiently, maintained all technical specifications, and delivered exactly on schedule. The only difference was that Meridian now paid market prices for specialized service instead of expecting premium support at commodity rates. 6 months after leaving Meridian, Mitchell Supply Chain Solutions was generating $45,000 monthly in revenue and had developed relationships with 12 additional customers. Victor was expanding production capacity and developing next-generation components specifically for the North American market. Derek lasted another year at Meridian before being reassigned to a different division. His replacement reached out to me directly and asked about establishing a more collaborative partnership with Mitchell Supply Chain Solutions. "We recognize that supply chain relationships require mutual investment and respect," she said during our first meeting. Derek's approach created unnecessary friction with critical suppliers. "We'd like to rebuild those relationships on a more sustainable foundation." The new partnership agreement included volume commitments, collaborative product development, and shared investment in supply chain improvements. Instead of treating suppliers as interchangeable vendors, Meridian began investing in strategic relationships that created competitive advantages. Victor visited the United States for the first time in 5 years to celebrate the expanded partnership. During dinner at a restaurant overlooking the Ohio River, he raised his glass and offered a toast to Brian Mitchell, who understood that business relationships require respect, investment, and patience. Sometimes the best partnerships begin when people have the courage to change what isn't working. Today, Mitchell Supply Chain Solutions manages $8 million annually in precision component distribution, with exclusive access to specialized technologies that are difficult to source elsewhere. The business employs 4 people and maintains partnerships with manufacturers across Central Europe. Derek learned an expensive lesson about the difference between managing costs and managing relationships. His $2,100 budget rejection became a $400,000 annual expense when Meridian lost direct supplier access and had to pay market rates for specialized components. But the real lesson is about recognizing value in unexpected places. 22 years of institutional knowledge and supplier relationships weren't obsolete. They just needed a different business model to realize their potential. Sometimes the best revenge is building something better than what you left behind.